annual town meeting for Ashfield. Again, thanks for coming. We'll wait till these couple folks, well, there's a stream of people, so we will just work through it. No quorum is required by our bylaws, so I am calling this meeting to order. And as required, you'll see fire exits on either side here. Are people comfortable? I'm sorry. Hello? Thank you. That was ironic that I have to talk to the principal about being quiet. I've been waiting for 60 years for that opportunity. Are people comfortable? I don't think we need fans. Anybody disagree? Should I close this door, which is letting air in? Anybody uncomfortably cold? Perfect. All right, we like perfect. So at this time, I'd like to ask our clerk, Bridget Rodriguez, to read the return of the warrant.
Hello. To either of the constables of the town of Ashfield and county of Franklin, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the inhabitants of said town, qualified to vote in elections and in town affairs, to meet at the town hall in said Ashfield on Saturday, the 5th day of May, 2018 at 10 o'clock in the morning, then and there to act on the following articles. And this year we have 33 articles on the warrant. And you are directed to serve this warrant by posting up attested copies thereof at the Ashfield Town Hall and the Ashfield Post Office in said town, 7 days at least before the time of holding said meeting. Hereof fail not, and make due return of this warrant with your doings thereon to the town clerk at the time and place of meeting as aforesaid. Given this day, under our hands, this 23rd day of April in the year 2018, signed by the Ashfield Select Board, and then signed by the Constable on April 24th, 2018, when they posted.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. As you know by our bylaws, if you're not a registered voter of the town of Ashfield, you're required to sit on the flanks, which are this wall, that wall, and the back wall. We invite you to stay so long as you agree to two conditions. One is, during a vote, do not vote. And if asked, you'll register. If you wish to speak, you'll identify yourself as a non-registered voter, and we'll seek the permission of the meeting to allow you to speak. Are there any non-registered voters who disagree with those conditions? We're good to go. Traditionally, what we do is we advance Article 1. Does everybody have a copy of the warrant? Anybody not? Good. We'll advance Article 1 so we can open the polls downstairs and begin the ballot voting, so that those waiting to vote can do so and then join us up there. Is there any objection to advancing Article 1 to open the polls? Thank you. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kohler.
I move that the town elect a moderator and a tree warden, all for a one-year term, a select board member, a board of assessor member, a finance committee member, a board of health member, a constable, a park commissioner, a sewer commissioner, a school committee member, all for 3-year terms, a planning board member, and a library trustee for 5-year terms, and vote on the following question, ballot question number 1. Shall the town of Ashfield be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay the bonds or notes issued in order to purchase a highway dump truck?
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of opening the polls, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That carries unanimously. So the polls are open. I'd like to ask Constable present.
Good morning.
Do you have a report for us on the condition in the ballot box?
Our voters. The ballot box has been tampered and locked again, and it's empty and already ready for
Thank you, Councilor LaJour. So, we're up and running downstairs. I'd like to identify the people at the front table. To my right is Town Clerk Richard Rodriguez. To her right is our Town Administrator Casey Warren. Select Board Member Tom Carter. Select Board Chair it's Pavel Lanek. Select Board Member Ron Kohler. Finance Committee Chair Ted Murray. Finance Committee Member Mary Fitzgibbon. Finance Committee Member Carl Satterfield. And we're missing one. We are. Right. And Lindy LaJour. I didn't give you a support, didn't I? Lindy Goodgen, Finance Committee Member. I have to get to the bottom of that when I do that. It's like not knowing the child's name or something like that. So, thank you all for your service, and we're ready to go. We have some tellers. I think we have 3 tellers. And I'd like to thank beforehand Caroline Murray, Nina Kohler. Oh, you were sitting together. So you could count together. Ann Urian, where's Ann Urian? She's here? She's downstairs? Hi, Ann. I'm not doing so well. So we have 3. We identified 3. They've all been sworn at this juncture. So this is that point in our proceeding where we take a pause to recognize those that were here for last time meeting and have died since. So I would like to, for those who are able, if you could stand as I read their names. Leslie Ladd, Barbara Maloney, Mary Zingler, Mary Hall, Linnea Gabrielle, Robert Parati, Mario Kinsey, Joan Lanou. We take a minute to think about them and what they've contributed to our lives and our community. Thank you. Thank them. I know every year this is everybody's favorite part. This is where it's required by our 1849 bylaws. I will read the bylaws that govern the conduct of our annual town meeting. May 24th, 1849, Code of Bylaws. 1. All persons present at any town meeting shall, while the meeting is open, be seated when requested by the presiding officer, if there be sufficient seats therefore, and if not, they shall stand at the west end of the hall. 2. When anyone addresses the chair, he shall rise and stand uncovered during his speaking. 3. No one shall stand in front of the chair or around the moderator's stand when votes are being counted or given in, except they are called upon by the chair. 4. There shall be no talking about the house while business is being done, and all shall keep silence at the request of the chair. 5. No one shall speak on the same question more than twice without leave of the meeting, or to explain, or to call to order. 6. No one shall interrupt another while speaking except to call him to order. 7. When several motions are made in regard to the same subject relating to the sums of money, numbers, or time, the question shall be first put upon the largest sum or number and the longest time. 8. In all other cases, no new motion shall be made while one is pending, except as an amendment, or to commit, or to adjourn. 9. When a vote decided by the moderator is questioned, it shall be made certain by persons on either side rising and standing in their places, uncovered till counted by the moderator, or tellers appointed by him. 10. The reports of all committees relating to money or property shall be in writing. 11. All motions and amendments shall be in writing when required by the chair or by any person. 12. No person shall be allowed to move to reconsideration of the vote unless he has voted in the majority or not voted at all. 13. No peddling or smoking shall be allowed in the hall during the meeting. 14. This code of bylaws shall be read by the presiding officer or town clerk at each annual meeting. Thank you. The warrant for this year contains 33 articles. We want every voter to know what he or she is being asked to vote on. Rather than reading each article as it appeared in the warrant, we have learned that by dispensing with the complete preliminary reading and instead just referring to the number of the article will save valuable time for our discussion. This makes sense particularly so since meeting members have been provided with copies of the warrant, so each of you has notice of the posted articles. There is a few announcements I'd like to make before we start. One is there's a paving notice, of which I have a copy somewhere here, that notifies us that starting on Monday, May 7th, I know I have it, here it is. There'll be paving from May 7th to May 11th, beginning on May 7th at 6 a.m. Paving is going to be on Main Street, traveling on southbound to the Conway line. Northbound paving is expected to be completed on Thursday and Friday. The police department requests no on-street parking, that's in bold, on Main Street. Parking is available at the Congo Church, across from Town Hall, and at the ball field parking on Bronson Avenue. Please expect delays and plan ahead, and thank you for your cooperation. I would like at this time, you can see, don't ignore the man behind the, what's the line from The Wizard of Oz? On the screen. That is Dan Frank, who this year has, I really want to thank Doug Fields, who has done this forever. Dan has provided us with a more sophisticated sound system. How do I sound?
Great.
All right, thank you, Dan. So, thank you to Dan Frank for doing that. And I think we're raring to go. As soon as I get my notes, we are raring to go. So, at this time, we can move on to Article 2. Do I hear a motion?
Moderator.
Mr. Lannan.
I noticed that your microphone is untethered, so you're going to be all over the hall.
I'm a pacer.
Yeah. Well, thanks for so many people coming out to help us do our business today. I want to remind everyone that Kentucky Derby pre-race show starts at noon, and it's supposed to be 70 degrees and sunny today. And it's not too early to start planting peas, so let's get this done. I move that the town act on the reports of the town officers.
Second.
Any discussion? Being no recommendation from the Finance Committee on this non-intro article. Any discussion about accepting the reports of the town offices? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor of accepting the reports, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Article 3, elected officials' compensation. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to set the stipends and compensation for all elected officials of the town, Select Board, Board of Assessors, Board of Health, Moderator, Tree Warden, and Constable, as provided by the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108, to be made effective July 1st, 2018, as contained in the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Anything you'd like to say about this, Mr. Carter?
This, just according to the law that I quoted here, Chapter 41, Section 108, annually it needs to be accepted, that chapter and verse, so the budget amount for the officers can be paid.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
recommended by the Finance Committee 400, as specified in the warrant article.
Thank you, Chair Murray. Moving on to Article 4. Oh, I think we should vote on this. I keep thinking about getting back and planting my peas. Got me all screwed up. I will. Okay, all in favor of the Article 3, involving compensation, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you for cleaning up my mess. Kyle? You wanted me to make sure that everyone checked in who is seated here, is that correct? Every registered voter, anybody not checked in? Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Okay, now how about if we move on to Article 4?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Kohler.
I move that the town vote to authorize the town treasurer with the approval of the select board to borrow money from time to time in anticipation of revenue of the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018, in accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 4, and to renew any note or notes as may be given for a period of less than 1 year, in accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 17.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I will note this will require a 2/3 vote, a supermajority. Would you like to explain what we're doing here?
This article is general housekeeping, every year the same.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Murray.
Yes.
Is that microphone on? Can you speak into the microphone to work?
As
The amplification is also going downstairs, so people who are poll workers and other voters can also hear our proceedings. So I want to make sure we use the microphones.
Mr. Moderator, the microphone is not working at this time, but I'll speak loudly and notice that the Article 4 has been recommended unanimously by the Finance Committee, 400, and you will see that in your warrant, each article, I think, will carry the recommendation by the Finance Committee, so that there may not be a need for us to, in each case, further speak to it. There is one article toward the end of the warrant which does not have a recommendation, for which we do have a recommendation. So when we get to Article 32, we have a recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion? I think I'll call this one for a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's fine. So we don't have to count because we know if it's unanimous, we know that it's 2/3, right? So Article 5.
Mr. Moderator.
Yes, Mr. Orlando.
I move that the town vote to authorize the select board to accept and expend any grants and or gifts that may become available.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would you like to just explain what we're doing here?
So if the town applies for and receives any grant money or any gifts, this article would authorize the town to expend them.
Thank you. Is there a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Would you rather not? Okay. Mr. Murray just said it's just easy. I have it in writing here, so I can tell you what the recommendation is. I might have been told beforehand that that's the way we're going to do it, and I might have forgotten. So this is recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously 4-0 to 0. So are we ready to vote or any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that just required a simple majority, so that passes unanimously. Article 6, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
This is going to last very long. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to authorize the select board to dispose of any unused town equipment and/or property.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Why are we doing this?
Again, it's kind of odd, you know, we're doing all the housekeeping before we've actually made a mess here. But it is another housekeeping article, just so if there is property that becomes available to the town or equipment that we have that we're not using, that we want to put out to bid, that we have the authority to do that.
Thank you. This has been recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously, 4-0 to 0. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? That passes unanimously. Mr. Murray, at this time, we found it very useful in recent years. The Finance Committee, by Chair Murray, does a presentation and overview of the budget. Mr. Carter has done it at times, the Finance Committee has done it, and they have a little PowerPoint slideshow to assist us in understanding the overall budget before we go on and start voting on money matters. So, thank you, Mr. Murray.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here to spend a few minutes, and I'll try to be quite brief, in terms of giving you an overview of the budget and how we see it from both the Select Board and the Finance Committee standpoint, because we've been working together throughout this past string of these budget hearings. And I want to acknowledge, first of all, that this is a Finance Committee effort, in the sense that both Mary and Carl have been keeping minutes and notes. It's on track. Lindy and Carol Riegel, who's not here this morning, did the article for the Ashfield News, which I hope a number of you have read, because I think it's an excellent exposition of what we've done with the budget. And that leaves me alone to do the talking, and I'll try to be as short as I can. But I'm also assisted here by Casey, who keeps me on track with these slides. Now, for those of you who like the idea of looking at the slides close up and see them in your own handout, if you will look on page 41 of the warrant, you will find copies of the 5 slides that I'll speak to. But the 5 slides will be also projected up here in color, so you can see all the rich variety of blues and yellows and blacks. And what I'd like to do, first of all, is give a quick overview of the budget. What you see here is very much what we did last year, and I'm trying to do this to give sort of consistency to what you're seeing year in and year out. For example, last year, in fiscal year 2018, you can see the different categories of budgets that we talk about in our budgeting process. And the total budget down at the bottom came to $5.123 million. $5.1 million. The fiscal year 2019 budget, which we're proposing to you today, has that same column of figures, and it sums to, surprisingly, $5.1 million, about $14,000 less than last year. That is a remarkable achievement, it seems to me, in that we are typically accustomed to budgets going up and up and up, and that's been our case too in this town. But we've had some very favorable developments. The most notable one of which is on the education line you see there, where despite, and within the midst of a couple of these categories that have gone up by double digits, you see the education budget has gone down by 7%. Now, that's not because we're ruining the educational system in our view. In fact, the Mohawk Trail Regional School District budget has gone up 1.7%. But the big advantage that we've received this year is in the form of the vocational education budget, which went down by $238,000. Largely because we have a number of students that will be graduating this year, and we no longer will be paying their tuition next year. and we have very few students who are signed up for vocational education for this coming year. So this may be a fluke, it may be a one-off, I don't know that it's a trend at all, but this particular year we're fortunate to have that development, and it means that we basically have a level funded budget this year in the aggregate. This next slide shows the way in which we have tried to establish some priorities for our spending. In the midst of this level budget situation, we have still been able to set aside what we think to be critically important monies or funds for what we believe to be 5 key priorities in the town. First one up is, of course, broadband. And we have set aside another $37,000 that you will see later in the budget discussion, so that as to bring our contingency funds for this broadband project up to about $230,000 that we have saved in a reserve now to augment, as necessary, the $2.3 million that was authorized by vote some years ago for borrowing for this broadband project. It's a contingency fund that we think is important to have in hand, and it may lead to our not having to borrow quite so much money in the future. The bridges in this town are numerous. We have over 23 bridges, I believe. A number of them are small bridges, of course, but still, they are at an age where a number of them are going to need significant repairs. And to comply with state regulations and statute and so on, this can be very expensive in terms of the design, the engineering work, and so on, as well as the construction. So we have set aside $100,000 here for bridges, and we add that to what we already have of $55,000 saved up. So now we have a reserve of $155,000. But that seems like a lot of money for many of us, and yet if you look at a small bridge, for example, over on Apple Valley Road, we're guessing that bridge repair, all said and done, might run on the order of $800,000 for design and engineering and construction and all the permitting that needs to be done. These are frightfully expensive projects, and this is an expenditure we'll probably have to continue for some years into the future. Town Hall here. We have been saving money with the expectation it would be put toward repair of the steeple here. And at one point, I think we believed that $80,000 would cover it. So we were saving $20,000 a year. And we continue to do that here with a $50,000 amount because the latest estimate for the repair is $248,000. So these cost estimates keep creeping up, and we're trying to forfend against running out of money for that by saving it up this way. The Belden Library needs roof repair, and we are matching the $40,000 that was the library trustees will be putting up to repair that building. Salary adjustments is something very special I want to spend a little time on later, but it means this, that we have taken seriously this notion of internal and external equity for our employees here in town. Instead of making one-off adjustments here and there, we have retained, the select board retained a consultant who did a study quite thoroughly of neighboring towns in our own salary structure and has made a set of recommendations which should bring us to some form of equity, we believe, for our various employees. And that $28,000, again, is over and beyond what we normally would be paying, like a 2% increase. We've typically given a 2% cost of living adjustment. And if we were to do that this year going forward, it would be about, I think, $12,000 some dollars, $13,000 some dollars. And so this $28,000 is more expensive than that, but only by about $15,000. And yet I think it's going to bring much more satisfaction and equity to our employees, as you'll see in a moment. And then, of course, this highway dump truck that has to be replaced after 20 years, this is an ongoing kind of capital replacement program that we are in as a town. And we are now deciding to set aside $50,000 for a fire department truck because after a number of years of trying for grants, we've been unsuccessful, and it's probably going to be incumbent upon us to spend money to buy that truck ourselves, or at the very least, demonstrate to granting agencies that we are interested enough to start putting our own money away, and they are more willing to match that with a grant in the future, we hope. And then there is a senior center expansion fund, which we we want to support because we have an increasingly aging population. So these are the priorities that we think of. But by disciplining ourselves to focus on those top 5 in the bolded print, we think we've done a good job of being focused on the most critical things for the town. This is a demonstration of the kind of traditional long-term planning we've done, and it simply does the following. On the left-hand column, you see the different categories of town hall, highway, fire, police, and so forth. And you can see that for fiscal year 2019, we are proposing some $392,000 of expenditure for these different priorities that we've talked about. That's a level of expenditure which is probably going to be sustained for at least the next 4 years, as you can see. Thereafter, as we get farther out to the right-hand side of this matrix, there appears to be less expenditures required, which looks like good news, but I just caution us not to get too excited about that future, because very typically things will come up in the meantime. For example, if you look at the Mohawk Trail Regional School District, the second row from the very bottom, it looks like that debt that we have incurred for repair of buildings and so on is going to evaporate at some point. If you have a building and an asset, a physical asset, it's very likely that we will start to get new numbers on the far right-hand side of that at some point. And likewise for some of the equipment needs up at the top. That's not going to end, but it gives you some idea of how we're trying to plan. And we've got this chart that goes out to 2045, when we finally will have paid off that highway garage. How's this going to affect the town, and more importantly, how's it going to affect you? Well, from the town standpoint, we and the Finance Committee in particular, as well as the Select Board, focus on this issue of how much have you got by way of free cash and stabilization funds when this is all over and done with. And what you can see there is the total reserves that we expect at this town's annual meeting on the far right-hand column, that we should, in combination, have $579,000. That, compared to our budget of $5.1 million, gives us a reserve margin of 11.3%. And that's nicely within the range of what we expect to have all the time, and that's 10 to 15% of financial reserves. So that's an important test for us to verify that we have reserves available should some kind of an unforeseen circumstance develop. More importantly, though, perhaps, is how does it affect you? Well, if you look at the total to raise down in the far, in this, the second column from the left, the total to raise of the $5.1 million is nothing more than the general budget that we just talked about. That's what the town has to raise this year. We're going to meet the budget. We have estimated receipts in other funds available, $921,000, which leaves us with a requirement on the total tax levy of roughly $4.2 million. That's on the taxpayers. Now that levy, if you divide it by the current valuation, and now I'm over here in this far right-hand column, the total valuation of the town currently is $242 million of property and housing and so forth. If you take the tax levy and divide it by the valuation currently, the estimated tax rate would be $17.29 per thousand, which is very close to what our current tax rate is of $17.18. It's a 1% increase. So we think that with all of this financial expenditure and receipts and all the rest of it, that we still have done a good job for the citizens by keeping the tax rate very consistent. This last slide addresses this question of the salary adjustments that we're proposing. In consultation with this survey that we had done, we are looking at, let's say, 2 examples: a laborer, highway worker perhaps, or a clerical position, different wages per hour, $19 or $14. And for sake of time, let me just focus on the laborer. If somebody's currently getting $19 an hour, we've done a survey, or this consultant has done a survey to show that that kind of work in surrounding towns, and there are about 8 or 10 towns in this area that have been canvassed for this. The survey average midpoint is about $20.44. We are proposing to reach that midpoint plus 3% over the next 2 years. In other words, we're saying that laborer, we would like to pay that midpoint range plus a little bit more, kind of leading the target for the next 2 years. And that would mean, if we do that, we're going to be paying that person $21.05 an hour for a wage increase of $2.05. And multiplying that by the number of hours worked, 450, comes up with a 2-year total increase of $922. Half of which we are going to be paying for fiscal year 2019, and the other half will be paid in 2020. And that is compared to if we had just given a 2% increase per hour this year, for 2019, you'd go to $19.38, and that 38-cent increase times that same number of hours would be an increase in salary this year of $171. So what we're proposing is richer in this instance than just a 2% increase. But at the end of the day, at the end of 2 years, we are quite confident that we will have our employees paid appropriately given the classification within our various salary structures and comparable to what colleagues in neighboring towns would be getting. And we think that's a very important development to see to it that our town employees who do so much work on our behalf are properly paid. That's the system that we're proposing.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Thank you, Finance Committee. That is so helpful before we start voting on these articles. And I love this tradition. I personally, as a citizen and as moderator, I think it's so helpful to see that. So thank you. And thanks to the Select Board for its contribution to making that happen. So, Article 7. Do I hear a motion?
Yes, Emily Robertson, Baptist Corner Road School Committee. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $2,635,279 to pay for school committee stipends, regional educational expenses, educational capital expenses, and vocational school expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
This has been recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously, 4 to 0 to 0. Would you like to speak to this, Mrs. Robinson?
Hopefully most of you picked up the yellow handout in the hallway out there, which gives most of the details. As Ted said before, this is an increase of 1.71% over last year. I was chair of the budget subcommittee, and I'm proud of this one. So I'll just take any questions.
So, discussion. Questions, comments? No? Okay. Rise, state your name and where you live.
Yeah, Laura Scribino, 25 Watson Spruce Corner Road. Are you want me to go here?
Yes, please. This is being amplified for downstairs and amplified for those people who came here, and it's being recorded, so best use the microphones.
Okay, your name, should I lower it? Very short.
Like she said.
Okay. Laura Scribino, 25 Watson Spruce Corner Road. A parent of a current 8th grader at Mohawk Middle School. On the introductory overview to the fiscal year 2019 budget and assessments, this is page 3 of a full budget that I pulled off the website from the Mohawk District. There's a section titled, "What do towns and citizens receive for their investment in education?" And the information provided is based on an approach to academics that Mohawk has now eliminated. And as a taxpayer and a parent of a child in the school, I'm deeply concerned and highly skeptical that the new approach to academics will yield similar results over the time. And I really believe that the district leadership has taken unnecessary risks with student and family satisfaction and progress at a time when the focus has been on sustainability. We had a multi-year BEST committee studying things. We know that there's pressures on our rural public schools, and yet there are changes being made that has resulted in deep satisfaction, and there's a great handout that some of us have been sharing today. Some of the upper grade students, recent alumni, and parents who voiced concerns about the academic direction being taken are the very ones whose successes are touted in that preamble to the budget. So I just want to make really clear that the academics that were available to those students that are being held up as where we're getting value are not the academics that are being offered going forward. And there were comments on a petition that speak to that, so you don't have to just take my word for it. So I think there are so many variables at play that I'm not sure I can support the budget, and I have a few questions about it. We're provided with enrollment numbers as well as information about the cost of tuition for charter and choice. And I believe these can be used as two indicators of perceived value of the education that Mohawk is providing. And if that data were to be collected more systematically and be more readily and transparently provided, we as taxpayers could see more clearly over time whether and what impact the academic shift has had on the sustainability of the school. Okay, so thank you for the handouts. I was comparing them to last year's handouts on enrollment. I have a couple of questions for, I don't know if these are school committee questions, Emily, or for the district leadership, but when you were looking at class sizes of 50 to 75 kids, losing 5 kids already enrolled could be 7 to 10% of that grade. Concerned parents have been told, so be it, if a handful of kids leave. So what has the school committee or district leadership determined to be acceptable student loss levels given the pressures financially? Are there red light scenarios under which you would say something really is wrong, we're losing too many kids or too many families are choosing other options? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zito. Ms. Robertson, Superintendent?
Sounds like more of an academic question than a budget question, so I would defer to the superintendent.
The superintendent is not a registered voter of Ashfield. Is there any objection to the meeting giving him leave to answer that question and speak otherwise? No objection. Mr. Superintendent, thank you.
Good morning. Michael Bonaparte, Superintendent of Schools. To answer the question directly, the administration school committee, we don't believe there's any acceptable loss in terms of families that choose to go elsewhere. It's our work all the time to provide the best quality education possible, to attract people to choose to stay with us. That's the nature of public education today. It's a whole different animal than existed 20 years ago. People have options. So public school districts don't have the luxury of just assuming kids are coming here. So our approach to district improvement planning, school improvement planning, is to be responsive to our communities. Now, these concerns raised today have been heard extensively by the school committee and in other public forums for the past couple of years. What I want you to hear clearly is that we have worked to increase the rigor in our curriculum across the board in all subject areas through the use of inquiry, hands-on learning, and a much greater focus on critical thinking skills. We continue to offer a large menu of advanced placement courses for our students who are so inclined. We have approximately 10 of those courses now, which is unusual for a school Mohawk size. So, I guess perhaps the last thing I would just point out is our teachers, our educators, the people that are instructing our students are the strongest advocates for the direction that we're going in now. And I think that's really kind of where the rubber meets the road on this issue.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article 7.
Wendy Kaiser.
Thank you.
Does this work?
Thank you.
Not good?
Yep. I was told to treat it like an ice cream cone. Get close, but don't lick.
Okay. Hey guys, I'm Holly Road in Ashfield. I am somebody who has been a public high school teacher in the state of Massachusetts for 19 years, and I've been a public university professor for 4 years. I teach English education. I am 100% committed to creating quality public education. The question that I want to ask, and the reason this does tie to the budget, is are we getting the value that our money can get for what we're giving to the public schools? And I am really worried that we're not meeting the needs of all students. So public education should provide quality education for all children to appropriately meet their needs. And different children have different needs. In the past few years, the Mohawk Middle and High School made a deliberate decision to eliminate all honors classes for students who would be interested or ready for those classes. They replaced that with extra credit assignments so students could still earn honors credit. The theory behind this was to give everybody access to the same education. However, voices of students and families express that there are many students waiting to learn new things when they're ready to move on. So that goes against the basic educational principle of assessing what students can already do without teacher help and moving them forward from that. Despite sitting and listening to feedback from parents, the administration has gone ahead and made changes, sort of unannounced changes that don't attend to those concerns at all. Many families have left the district, families have moved away, they have selected school choice schools, and they have selected private schools because their students are so unhappy that they're choosing to go to the extra effort of leading the community to get the education that they feel that they need. This is evidence that students' needs are not being met and that we as a community are not serving the needs of our children. So while parents who have kids in the schools see this as a top of mind issue, I wanted to take today to call attention to every community member that it is our responsibility to make sure that our public schools are providing a quality education that's appropriate to every student in our region who would like to go to the public schools. There's also financial cost. So every student who leaves for a charter school or a choice school is taking $1 away from our public schools. That means that we can't use that money to make our schools even better. I looked at the town budget online and I'd be happy to, the school budget, and I'd be happy to be corrected. But what I got from there is that the charter assessment, so this is just the amount that Mohawk is spending for charter schools, in 2019 is estimated at $917,284, and the school choice assessment is $417,800. So that total is $1,335,000 that is going outside of our district because students aren't feeling that their needs are met. The total education budget was listed at $2,635,000. So that's close to half of the budget, and again, I may have misread it, but that's what I got from the line item in the school budget. So I am always in favor of teachers' salaries being paid. I never would want a teacher's job cut and take away that from our children. So I am going to vote to approve the budget, but I would like us to take this next year to try to become more active as a community, to hold our schools more responsible to providing a quality education that will encourage students to stay in the district instead of leave the district. Our school committee needs to hold Mohawk accountable to higher standards for all students, even students who want more rigor from their education. And we also have a duty to our citizens to collect and post publicly information about why each family leaves. The school committee has been asked to do this, and they said that it would be too difficult, but they merely need to survey the families who have taken their students out of the schools and publish that information so we can all benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kaiser. Further, Mr. Superintendent.
So the first thing I'd like you to know is we still have honors classes. It's how we deliver those classes. And we have gone in this direction specifically to provide a curriculum for all of our students. What we're talking about here is tracking and detracking students. We're not doing that anymore. The data is overwhelming that by tracking kids to lower levels of rigor, we set them up in life to not achieve the levels that they should achieve at. So what we're doing here specifically is to cater to all of our students and to give them all access to honors. And the delivery, again, so it's within the classroom. This is more demanding now, so teachers have to provide for a larger spectrum of students in their classrooms. But again, the teachers are the strongest advocates for this and are advocating privately to me that they do not want to go back to track classes, that it is not the right thing to do for our kids. Regarding the numbers, as I mentioned, every community in Massachusetts now is a competitive environment for choice and charter. So if you look at the data, Mohawk for the past 5 years has averaged a few kids to the positive. The charter expense is high, it's high for everybody. Other school districts that are known to be highly reputable, like Frontier and Amherst, their percentage of money going to their charter expenses is twice that of Mohawk. So there's a certain amount of this that's going to show up in every school budget. We're paying attention to what our people, what our staff, what our kids, what our families are looking for. And we are deliberately being as responsive as we can be. But I certainly invite you to come to our school committee meetings, our budget subcommittee meetings, our ed subcommittee meetings. These are all public, and everybody's voices are heard.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes.
My name is Leslie Parker. I live on 1038 High Road. I have students at Mohawk. I'm worried about the budget. I'm worried about students leaving, just like the other speakers. I have 2 children in 8th grade. And in 7th grade, they went to Sanderson. Great experience. Thank you, Emma. And I know Ms. Schreiber here, and I don't know if there's any other teachers, but thank you. They went to Mohawk excited. They were told they went to Step Up Day, and they were like, hey, we're going to have honors or advanced math. We're excited about it. We got there. They stripped it. We're like, all right, well, let's just see. Let's see how it works. It didn't work. And I know Mr. Barakai talks about honors being this, you do have honors options. It's honors homework. If you want to get an honors credit on your transcript, you ask for extra work. And there's no honors instruction. There's no honors class where you're sitting and you're having dialogue with like-minded students who are passionate about it. It's on a piece of paper. That's all it is, and it's homework. That's not honors classes. And I think the word tracking is misleading. It's not. It makes it sound like the haves and the have-nots, and that's not how a school should be. But we don't do heterogeneous groupings in all of school. My kid's never going to be first-string quarterback. Or, my daughter, no offense, is probably not going to be in this select court. Kids have different passions, different talents. And while we acknowledge those in the athletic field, and in drama, and art, we're being told in academic classes, one size fits all. And it's not working. Kids are leaving. I looked at my kid's 6th grade Sanderson photo. 7 of those kids, Sanderson's not a big school. 7 of those kids have left for academic reasons. 7. Either by the end of this year, it'll be 7. For academic reasons only. That's money. And that will be a budget issue if it continues, and that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Further discussion? Let's hear if there's anybody who hasn't spoken, Mrs. Fino. Okay. Mrs. Robertson. I'm just going to say something here, and I'm never quite sure what to do about this. Something's chirping. My goal is to make sure everybody gets heard. Obviously, Mrs. Robertson has worked tirelessly on this. The superintendent has vast knowledge and runs the administration over there, and there are other people involved we'd like to get responses to. What I'm always seeking to avoid is to always get sort of somebody says something from their perspective, and then there's going to be a response, a last word for them. I want to make sure that people feel heard, but we all want information because we're voters and because we care about our schools. So, Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you. I'm going to try to keep it together. The main reason I'm leaving school committee is because I'm perimenopausal, so I will get in front of a group and, like you guys, either start bawling or like totally lose my temper, which is why I kind of stood back during this discussion, but Tom's ready for me to fly. He wants to see this happen. So I'm going to try to not be emotional, but I'm apologizing in advance that if during the school articles at one point or another you see me break down, it's just transition. Another reason I'm stepping down is because there's a very small group of moms in Ashfield, and I want to put this into context, that have a bone that they will not let go. This is not a discussion happening in other towns. In fact, I've been in other towns that said this is an elitist Ashfield problem. Now, I am upset to see these moms here today and speaking to you and not using whole truths about the situation to mislead about the status of our district. I am also a parent in the district and very much support, and I hope you all read Jennifer Williams' letter in the last Ashfield News that very eloquently says, what's going on. In terms of choice and charter, we're not getting the charter reimbursement we used to from the state. We've got a whole town of Heath that we're choicing into Hollamont now. So it's not about number of kids, the high dollars, and we're always complaining about those dollars. I just want to put this in perspective that these moms, they showed up at one education meeting not telling people ahead of time that they were coming and not getting on the agenda. They've been to a single budget meeting, haven't been to the public hearing where you could ask questions and have input. And although I think the superintendent and the rest of the administration has bent over backwards to try to make up for what was initially an error in implementing this program that I very strongly support, I think that there are a couple of people that feel like their way is the only way, and unless they get it, they're not going to stop, and I feel bullied by these parents. And I'm sorry that I have to live in this town and say these things, but I want this to drop. This needs to end. We need to move on. Thank you.
All right, let's see if we can have this discussion without getting so personal. Please don't bawl. Yes, Mr. Precord and Mr. Wells, and then Mr. Precord.
Jeremy Precord from Ellis Road.
I'd like you to use the mic. I'll bring it to you, Mr. Precord.
What's the microphone?
Yeah, it's better. Mr. Wells, you're on deck. You might come up.
Jeffrey Precord from Ellis Road. Sir, last year at this meeting you promised us that there would be posting information on the site.
I can't hear you over here, sorry.
I'll do it again. I'm glad to. Last year at this meeting, you promised us that you were going to put something up on the school board site about programs, needs, assessment for special needs children. I checked last night. Either I missed it or it's not there. Last year, at this meeting, you promised us that you would have something on your website about programs, initiatives, whatever you're doing for special needs children. Special needs children. I looked last night, either I missed it or it's not there.
Hang on, let's just let people be heard. I suggest you make a note, Mr. Superintendent. And then you can address those things you want to before we're finished. Are you done?
Yeah, no, I'd asked the year before the same question, and the response I got last year was, we're going to put it on the website. So it's 2 years running.
And I will give you the opportunity to respond. Let's hear from some people. Mr. Wells is here.
Andy Wells from Bailey Road. This is the first town meeting where I can't actually sit with my wife. She needs to sit on the side because she now has residence in a different town. And the reason she does is because we made the choice last year that our kids, one of whom had gone through her junior year at Mohawk, the other one would have been entering 9th grade, felt like they no longer could get the same education. My 9th grader could no longer get the same education that my senior had gotten when she was in 9th grade. I hotly dispute the characterization that these changes Mohawk has made have increased the rigor. I can only speak on behalf of my own children, specifically my oldest daughter Lily, who said, "Mom and Dad, we need to leave because Jackie is not going to get the same education I got," and it's true, and it's been true. So now we've had to take up residence in another town, and I can only say that the difference between where they are now at Mount Greylock and Mohawk is stunning. Everything I thought that was deficient about Mohawk has been proven true. What we've been told is that, well, you can't have kids taking algebra in middle school because they're not going to learn math concepts if they do that, whereas every other school in the area does that. So they say that, well, if you teach them this too soon, then they won't be prepared to succeed in college. I can only tell you that my daughter is friends with kids who took algebra in 6th grade and have now successfully gotten A's at Williams in courses, in college courses as juniors and seniors beyond calculus. So this is just a lie. I really think that, education is an issue in which reasonable people can disagree on the best approach, whether heterogeneous or tracking. I think it's a slur and it's a mislabel to simply describe all differences in opinion as somehow the work of an elitist who wants tracking. I don't want tracking, but I do want my children to be engaged. And this entire issue that has led to multiple children in this town leaving the school system whose parents and them would otherwise have stayed. The reason this has happened is because children do not feel engaged. My daughter in 8th grade was being taught material 2 grades below her grade level. She was bored to tears. Now she deserves to be engaged, as does every child. And I think no matter what gifts you bring to the classroom, artistic, academic, whether you love science or you're a good writer or even if you don't like school, you deserve to be met where you're at. And I think the school system is failing miserably in this. And I can tell you that right now, your money is paying maybe less for you or only a slight increase in the educational budget, but you're getting far less for your money than we used to. And I just think this town should seriously consider whether this is the direction they want to go to. Do they really want to have kids just up and leave when they simply because they're motivated students? I think we need to educate all of our students. And I think it's wrong, and I think it's been wrong to portray parents who ask questions as somehow being elitist or out of touch. And by the way, I'm a dad, not a mom. So there are dads who are concerned about this issue as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I'm sorry, we're not, as is our history, our tradition, we do not applaud, because when we applaud one position, we're daunting those who might not share that from speaking or expressing theirs. Mr. Newell. I'm like Phil Donahue.
I'll stand over here, because I used to be honest with my dear friends and my esteemed chairman, Mr. Murray. A pleasure to be behind the table. My name is David Newell. I live on Steady Lane. Have been in town for over 40 years, and I love this place, and I love our schools dearly. I was a business manager at Mohawk for over 15 years. I was your town's, Ashfield, representative to the Mohawk Best Committee. This is a strategic long-term planning committee. It issued its report last year. I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with it. And when we started work on this committee, we identified 8 goals as to what we wish to do. 3 of them need to be mentioned. To make the district financially stable and workable, we had to look forward toward reduced or stabilized assessments. And the best way to get there, number 2, was to look for an increase in state aid and federal support. Which brings us to number 3, which is the best way to drive the state aid back toward Mohawk, and that is to reduce student losses to choice and charter schools. In meeting this goal, it all fundamentally boiled down to this. We needed to increase and retain revenues by aggressively marketing the district to students and their parents in order both to attract new students from outside the district and retain or recapture students who live within the district but have chosen, or maybe be choosing, to be educated elsewhere. A clear ancillary to this is working to create a vibrant curriculum that aligns with students' goals and ambitions. I'm concerned about what's playing out here. I have a great deal of respect for our superintendent and for our school committee and for our two town representatives. But it's very clear to me, having talked to a number of the hundreds of people who have opposed these moves, that this is not in the best interest of our school and is working in the direction opposite of what our committee established. In order, when you make a change, you really need two pieces to make it work. The first piece is the change has got to make sense, it's got to be positive, it's got to be beneficial, but that alone won't do it. The second piece to making it work is it's got to be acceptable. And this is where we have a problem. So, just to let you know, I'll just now speak as a citizen. I'm no longer on the Finance Committee, and I have completed my work on the Mohawk Best Committee. Oh no, I don't want the school to say that the conversation needs to end. My feeling is this conversation needs to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Mr. Olenek.
So my question is for Superintendent Boyd. I'm curious as to the change in the academic delivery from tracking, I heard, to homogeneous classroom. How much of that decision was driven by financial savings, and has financial savings been realized, or was that not the consideration for making that change?
Mr. Superintendent.
So the short answer is this was not an economic decision. This was an educational decision. If I could respond to one of the other questions, the gentleman in the back. I think, Mr.
Wells.
Oh, Mr. Precourt. Mr. Precourt, I think I'm going to have to invite you to come to a budget subcommittee meeting, because the detailed line item school budget is available publicly. If you're talking about special needs programs, I guess I need to understand exactly what it is you're looking for. For example, the HUB program at Buckland Children Elementary is a special needs program. The supported classrooms, both in the middle school and high school, are special needs programs. So I guess I just need to understand better what it is you would like to see in the budget.
Okay, before I ask for, did you get an answer to your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was there a financial savings realized from that? Is that able to parse out? No?
Was there a financial savings realized from that?
No, money just was never part of the conversation. This was just about education.
I see Mr. Precourt wants to follow up and Ms. Savino wants to follow up. I just want to tell you that Mrs. Robertson, I was contacted before. There was a proposed amendment to the budget that had to do with curriculum and the like. When I said that I thought that was out of order, because beyond the scope of my article, great the measure of understanding that was understood and agreed with even. And I did say I'd allow a conversation to go on about the concerns that we've heard expressed here today for some time, but I pointed out we have 33 articles. And I said we'll have to play it by ear. So I never want to shut off a conversation. I always want to defer to the meeting to use its judgment about how long we discuss this. This is a budget article. These concerns are real for the people who are expressing them. And do we want to continue this conversation before I solicit more, or do we want to move to a vote on Article 7, and as Mr. Newell suggests to us, let this be the beginning of a conversation. What's the sense of the meeting? How many people would like to continue this conversation and hear from other people and hear again from some who have spoken? How many want to continue the conversation? How many want to move on and vote? I say that we want to move on and vote. Anybody disagree with my assessment? Okay. All right. So let me add, I do hope this conversation continues. I thank everybody for their contributions. Is there any more discussion with respect to the budget, as opposed to some of the concerns about curriculum and the like? Any further discussion on the budget? No, we ready to vote? Okay, on Article 7, which requires a simple majority and is recommended unanimously by the Finance Committee. All those in favor of school expenses as moved, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Abstentions? Okay, I say the motion carries. Requires only a majority, we don't have to count. Article 8, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Robinson.
I move that the town vote to amend the Mohawk Trail Regional School District Regional District Agreement by striking the following language contained in Section 3E, vocational and trade school pupils, as referenced in the posted warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is recommended by the Finance Committee 4-0 to 0. Would you like to speak to this, Mr. Robinson?
This formalizes VAC in the regional agreement, and I think if there's any questions, we have a couple of representatives who are actually on VAC here that would be better suited to answer.
Thank you. So again, recommended by the Finance Committee 4-0 to 0. Is there someone from VAC, Mr. Newell?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Another hat that I have been wearing for several years now is Ashfield's Vocational Education Coordinator. Our vocational education operation is distinct from Mohawk. It is still the responsibility of the towns to manage this. And we do so because we're not a member of a vocational regional school district. Same boat in with Plainfield, Charlemont, and Holland. The other towns belong to Franklin Tech. Over the years, we tuition from 15 to 20 students to Smith Agricultural and Vocational School and Franklin Regional Tech. The last time this town took a look at the governance of vocational education was back in 1975. The old arrangements are obsolete, new arrangements are needed. So this amendment is going to clarify governance. It's going to lay out clearly what the town's responsibility is, primarily in payment of tuition. It's going to capture a new working relationship we've attained as towns with Mohawk, and kind thanks to our superintendent, Michael Bonaconti, who's given great leadership to that. Also, we are going to incorporate a arrangement where Mohawk will continue as the awarding authority for transportation. We work our transportation collaboratively with the other three towns, and over the last several years have been able to make it more efficient and have saved a considerable amount of money for all four towns. So this is now going to be codified, and lastly, the objective is to formally establish the Vocational Education Advisory Committee, which Emily referred to as VAC, that's what we mostly know it as. And it has operated up to this point without any statutory or local intermunicipal agreement. So, hope you'll vote yes.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Discussion? Anyone?
Second.
Did I not second? Did I get a second?
Yes.
Got a second. Okay, we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of Article 8 as moved, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes unanimously. Article 9, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to accept the following amendments to the Mohawk Trail Regional Agreement. Note the amendments below are to be effective July 1st, 2018, as referenced in the posted warrant.
Is there a second? We eventually got a second. That's good. Okay. So, would you like to speak to this, Mrs. Ross?
Okay, so this has to do with Roe again. Tom's nodding. So, for decades and decades and decades ago, we wrote the regional agreement with a tuition formula embedded in it for Roe. And we've known for many years that things on the state level have changed and that some of the formula is ambiguous and that we wanted to fix it. So we came to you 3 years ago and asked, instead of getting into a fight with Roe on how to fix it, why don't we just let them join the district again, because the reasons they left were no longer valid. But that got pulled at the last minute by the state because they wanted to review it one more time. So we came back the next year and said, all right, we're on the same page, let's vote. But Roe never voted. So I came back to you last year and I said, let's do this one more time. Let's ask Roe to come to the district. And all of the Mohawk member towns said, yes, Roe, we want you to come be part of our district. And Roe said, no, we like it the way it is. So we still have this problem in the regional agreement that the tuition formula is just confusing, wrong, doesn't work. So we sat down with Roe, a task force from the school committee and the business administrator and a group of people from Roe, and they worked out a tuition agreement that all sides felt was fair. And the idea is to take it out of the regional agreement and negotiate it on the side the way we do with other towns going forward, so we don't have to bug you guys at town meeting about Roe ever again. So that's what this does. It takes the tuition formula out of the regional agreement to be negotiated separately by a committee from Mohawk and the town of Roe. Would you like to
You're going to expand on what she's about, Mrs. Robinson. Please do, Mr. Mordecai.
So just to clarify what the group believe fair would be, it is the average assessment that the member towns are paying. That's what's driving the amount that is billed to Roe.
Thank you. This article has been recommended by our Finance Committee 4-0 unanimously. Discussion.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
I am certainly sick of talking about Roe. And it hasn't, I don't know. If it, I certainly hope that we could get some kind of commitment that we'd be able to go a half a dozen years without discussing Roe again. My question is on this agreement that we're being asked to vote on. Has Roe voted on it yet? I mean, do we have any commitment that it means anything to them besides 3 or 4 people sitting down and jotting things down on paper that's going to be presented? I mean, if I believe I'm correct that there's really no bind because Roe doesn't even belong to the same superintendency as the rest of us in the Mohawk district. Is that still correct? I'm getting a nod.
We're getting a nod.
So I'm all for trying to cooperate if it's on both sides, but I certainly, and I can see a lot of faces in this room, that the sooner we can get done talking about Roe, the happier we'll all be.
Further discussion? Yes, I see it in Ms. Schwartz. I'm sorry, could you use that microphone over there? Is that a stretch for you? Thank you.
Chair Talia Schwartz, Sears Road. Can you talk about the financial implications of this compared to the current agreement? You know, what does it mean for all of us in terms of school budget costs, what you've worked out with Roe?
Probably the most direct way that I can present this is on a per pupil basis. Had we used the negotiated tuition agreement this year was how we calculated it. So right now they're paying $13,500 per student, and had we used the negotiated tuition agreement, we'd be getting an extra $2,000 a student. There are what, about 25 students from Rome in the Mohawk, coming to Mohawk.
Okay, Ms. Schwartz, thank you for that question. Further discussion? We ready to vote on Article 9? Thank you. Yes? Okay, all in favor of Article 9 as moved, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 10, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Ms. Morrison.
I move that the town vote to accept the following amendments to the Mohawk Trail Regional Agreement as referenced in the posted warrant.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Would you like to speak to this, please?
So this regional agreement change will ask the towns to move the 6th grade to the Mohawk Trail Regional High School. Now, Shelburne had their town meeting on Tuesday, and they voted this down, so it's not going to happen. However, I've talked to the select board and with the administration, and we are hoping that I know we want to plant our peas, but we're hoping to have a discussion and a vote on this regardless. Odds are this is going to come up again, and we really appreciate the feedback to find out what people are thinking and how they feel about this issue.
So on this one, on Article 10, the Finance Committee, I don't see, oh, it is recommended by the Finance Committee 4 to 0 to 0. Correct, Mr. Chair?
That's correct.
Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Ms. Jacobs? Thank you.
Julia Jacobson, John Ford Road. I'm just curious, on first blush I would say, why? So what's the thinking behind this?
So I think to go way back, this had been brought up before, and I remember it being brought up in a budget subcommittee meeting by a teacher, actually, as a way to keep students from maybe once they got a chance to try Mohawk, and in 7th grade they wouldn't want to leave for charter. But that was way, way back. And then the BEST committee was studying sustainability, and they thought that consolidating schools was the way to go, and they looked into several different scenarios. And when they finally settled on had phase 1 of closing heat, which we've done, phase 2 would move students, the 6th grade students, to the high school, not for financial concerns, but for space reasons, so that potentially we could close Coleraine next and move those students to BSC. So the Coleraine move is on the table, is off the table indefinitely at this point, because we've seen an increase in students at the preschool levels. And, every year we reassess where we're at. So we're not really ready to talk about phase 3 yet, but phase 2, we're seeing the potential need in the future to free up a little bit more space at the elementaries and move them to the high school. But where this really took root was when the teachers and the administration started examining this from an academic perspective. There was a lot of excitement around how beneficial this can be for the students, especially those who have small classrooms, socially with other students, academically, all the different resources that there are at the high school level, arts, sports, and related arts. So that's how this little idea kept snowballing. And right now, that's our primary focus is academically. We think it'll be a beneficial move for this group of students.
Thank you. Discussion. We ready to vote? No, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Hi, sorry I wasn't planning on speaking today, but my name is Tina Miller. I lived in Ashfield for about 3 years now. My husband and I have 2 children in the Sanderson school right now. I've been part of all these meetings with the 6th grade move. There's many parents that I've been speaking with in terms of this move. And I can tell you I appreciate everything that Emily has talked about. I can tell you that I'm extremely passionate about not going forward with this move. I feel as though they're sort of rushing our kids through their childhood, and I can appreciate that there might be some other opportunities in terms of academics, but when you look at this sheet, and the thing that stands out in my mind the most is when you say, why do we need to move? And words like potential space, we may have an issue, those things don't feel good to parents to force our kids to do something when they think there might be an issue. If there was an absolute issue, then I could absolutely be a little more in favor. But knowing that we would be rushing our kids through their childhood, pushing them when my son would be 11 years old, 4 days before going to Mohawk, that's really scary. He's going to be going on a bus at 6:45 in the morning. He's going to be on a bus with kids that are quite a bit older than him, that are constantly on their phones, that are talking about issues and things that he doesn't even need to know about yet. So I feel really passionate. Again, there's other mothers that aren't here who I know feel, there's a whole group of us who feel this way. And right now, and I know it's not going through, and I'm super excited that VSC voted this way, but also my son's in 4th grade, and he would be the first class this would have affected. He's also in the same class who's struggled so much lately because of everything that happened with Summer Steel. These kids are broken. There is no way they're ready to be forced for this other change. And so for that, and even in the future with my daughter who's in preschool right now, my husband and I are absolutely against this move, and I hope those of you who don't have kids can appreciate our thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Further discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kristen Schreiber. I live on Watson Road. I'm also a parent of 3 children in the district. I'm also the 6th grade teacher at Sanderson. So this affects me very closely for many reasons. And I also have to tell you that I'm really good at working with kids, and I'm terrible at speaking in front of adults, so I'm shaking. I kind of fall on the fence on this issue, but I think it's really important for you to see that there are many sides. I want my kids to be kids for as long as possible. My daughter's with me. I want her to be a kid. And I love watching my 6th graders play on the structure outside just yesterday. And playing like kids, and playing make-believe, and being kids. I can also tell you that around January, they are done being in elementary school, and that they want more independence. And I think that one of my strengths as a teacher is that I can teach them in a way, because I remember being in 6th grade, which was in a middle school, and I survived. But I totally remember being a 6th grader, so I think that one of my strengths is that I can teach them and treat them as adults in their own way, with structure. And they've actually told me that. But that's what they want. So I can see both sides. I see that they want independence. They don't want to have to walk silently down the hall as 6th graders. It's also an awesome opportunity for them to show their leadership skills as 6th graders in a small school. So I just want to put out there the different sides of it, and that I can see both sides. I'm also one of those elitist families, sorry. I just wanted to put it out there that there are totally 2 sides of this, and as a 6th grade teacher, I can go both ways. But it totally does affect me. But I would love to be, as a teacher, I would love to be able to teach in a middle school setting where I can be in a team and see all the different sides of a student and be able to help them and help them grow and get other feedback. Where right now I'm me, and I'm part of a team, but for the most part, it's me. And so I see the strengths of being in a middle school model, helping students that are at this vulnerable age, and they really are. So I just wanted to explain a little bit, and I would be willing to have more conversations with anybody at any time.
Thank you, Ms. Schreiber. Yes, Ms. Hall.
Hall, Smith Road, Ashfield. My children are long gone after middle school, so I'm not speaking from the experience of being a parent of young, obviously young children right now. I worked in the field of schooling and education for 35 years. My children went to a middle school that was grades 6, 7, and 8, and I'm speaking on behalf of a positive vote for Mohawk moving to a grade 6, 7, 8 model. And the reason for that, from my point of view, is that 6th graders are at a point when they really benefit from a curriculum that is going to be challenging. I know that's another part of the discussion we're having today, but the challenging with teachers who have greater specialization in their subject areas, and especially science and mathematics, which are really important subjects for our students today. Not belittling the humanities, which I also believe are important, but I do think our students need to have teachers who have a great deal of background in these subject areas, and I would not want to shortchange them in that regard. The second reason I'm in favor of this is that, yes, I think 6th graders have 1 foot in childhood and 1 foot in something that's much older, but when they have a chance to be in a school with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, they're getting a picture of the stretch to the 7th and the 8th grades. And they're getting used to being in a larger school with shifting around a little bit more rather than in one room for the whole day.
Further discussion on this article? David Newell.
This was one of the recommendations from Mohawk's BEST committee. Again, I was Ashfield's rep of the committee. And the committee wrestled with it for about a year and a half. In the end, I think there was a general consensus to go with it for 3 reasons. One, there were some financial benefits, and our overarching task was to make the school district affordable. The second benefit, I guess you could call strategic. As Emily pointed out, it's designed to perhaps stem the flow of people out of the district. If they had a chance to take a look at Mohawk earlier on, it would be a greater opportunity to retain those students. And then lastly, education. And you've heard 2 speakers give you the opposing thoughts and viewpoints on the educational benefits of this recommendation, and there are also educational benefits for keeping grade 6 at Sanderson. But in the end, that's what the BEST committee recommended, and I recollect that's what Mohawk recommended, Mohawk School Committee as well.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Mr. Carter, then Ms. Schwartz is on deck. Ms. Schwartz, you can move over there.
So, no one's probably more pleased to see a lot of discussion at town meeting on school issues than I am. And we've had really good discussion. I second with Mr. Newell that a lot more discussion should be had and other opinions be shared on how things move forward. I support, and the select board supports passage of this article to make it available to move the 6th grade. Not so much that it's going to make a big, not at all, with the idea that it would save money. Right? I think some of the discussion we had earlier is that the vehicle that we use for education, this Mohawk Trail Regional School District, is unwieldy and it is dynamic and things are always changing and it's difficult to get everybody pulling on the same set of shafts. But we do think that when we're looking at education, that the resources that are available when we've got 8 towns trying to work together, that the more resources that can be put toward education, and maybe with the opportunity of not spending quite so much on facilities and God knows transportation, but I'm not sure that that's going to save anything. But if we can get in a position where more resources are spent on the actual education, which was part, I believe, totally on the earlier discussion, that it's very possible. It's been a long time since I was in 6th grade, but I can certainly understand what Christy Schreiber was just saying, that the only thing about on my mind was getting to Mohawk when I was in 6th grade. And I think my kids, that was on their mind also. This idea that Shelburne voted it down, I've heard some whispers that, it's kind of dead in the water. I don't believe that. I mean, we probably have twice as many people at this town meeting that voted down this amendment at Shelburne. There were less than 90 people there to vote on that in total. So we spend a lot of time on a year when our Mohawk budget goes up by 4 or 5%. We spend a lot of time whining about it when we're putting the budget together. But in Ashfield, there's never a doubt in my mind that the budget will pass, that we will support education and try to figure out how to put everything else together. I think voting yes to accept this amendment shows leadership on Ashfield's part to at least give them the vehicle to look at it, to see how it's going to affect education in total, and advance our needs as far as education and hopefully the rest of the towns that we work with.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Just by way of information, I think the vote in Shelburne was 59 to 28. Just for that. Chief Leah Schwartz.
Hi, this is a question for the superintendent, for school committee members. It seems really clear that there are a lot of dissatisfied parents and families, and we've talked a little bit about addressing that. In terms of changing to the 6th grade, going to Mohawk, what I'd like to hear is the educational approaches and impact and adjustments you're going to make. That's a totally different kind of curriculum and approach. So I'd like to hear educationally, what is the plan if we go for this to accommodate the 6th graders and also address these issues of challenge for all of our students, and it's addressed to the superintendent.
Thank you. Superintendent Montgomery.
So I invite you to look at this blue sheet that has there's 4 pages. 3 of them are specific to this particular topic. There's a lot of detail in here, but in terms of the educational gain that we thought might be there, some of this has already been addressed. The team teaching model was more developmentally appropriate for that age group. Having teachers focus in particular areas like science and math, and getting more specialization is one of the areas that the students would gain from. The plan that we did put together is very focused on the social and emotional needs of the kids. One way we tried to address that was that we would have the students be with one teacher for 2 of the blocks per day, as opposed to having 4 different teachers, so they would have 3 teachers, the same EL, English Language Arts teacher, as well as whether it's social studies, science, or math. So I think you really have to read through the details here, but we really tried to take the research that pointed in the direction where there were clear opportunities for educational gain. And people have already mentioned all of the theater, access to drama, sports, et cetera, et cetera. But we also tried to pay very close attention. We surveyed families. We listened to their concerns about the social and emotional needs, safety concerns. And we tried to embed all of those concerns into this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Hello, I'm Bill Scaife, 81 Smith Road. I'm formerly from Northampton. I've lived in Ashfield for about 9 years. And when I lived in Northampton, I had 2 younger daughters who went through elementary school, and I believe it was in their 4th or 5th year, 4th or 5th grade of elementary school, the city made a change to start sending 6th graders to the JFK Middle School primarily because there was a school population boom at the time, and there just wasn't room for all the students. Now, I can only speak for my 2 daughters and the experience of some friends, but it was a very difficult year for them socially. For both of them to be in 6th grade with 7th and 8th graders. The principal of the school promised to segregate them, give them their own wing. There'd be very, very little mixing of the students. But it just, the 7th graders were socially at a different level. Well, yeah, I think you can understand what I'm saying. My daughters were exposed to things they wouldn't have been exposed to at Leeds Elementary. Now, there may have been other parents who are very happy with that, so I don't know that we could generalize from my experience or the experience of other friends. But I just wanted to mention that to give you some thought, to give you something to think about. I also had 2 other quick points. One is that I'm not sure that I understand what or how this would work, or how it does work now. That the students would be eligible to attend school at the Mohawk Trail School. How is that? Do the students make that decision in 5th grade and then elect to go to Mohawk? And what does it do to schools like Sanderson, which already has a declining enrollment just because of demographics? And then the third point is that this is a fairly complicated issue when you dig into it. And I would just make the recommendation that a school committee or a subcommittee of the regional school committee do as congressional committees do, and dig into it and come up with one recommendation that they can make to town meetings. I mean, this, as I say, is complex, and I, for one, am getting details about it for the first time today, and it seems like it needs more than 20 minutes of thought. So that's just a recommendation that there'd be a recommendation, one single recommendation made by the school committee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm done.
Done. Thank you very much. God forbid we're more like Congress, I say, but Mr. Kohler.
I was thinking about this Secretary of State.
Yeah, this is a very difficult sort of discussion to have. Probably if you ask my daughter, she'd be animately opposed to this thing. But for myself, I can tell you I was on the Long Range Planning Committee for many, many years. And you got to look at the school system as its whole. You can't be driven just by Sanderson or just by Mohawk. Because at some point, students are going to go from one to the next. And over the last 10 years, the dynamics in the school system have changed completely. It used to be that the enrollment of when my wife and I were the first students to go all the way through Mohawk, 7th grade to 12th. It was a scary experience as a 7th grader, believe me. So I can relate a little bit to the situation with leaving things as they are. But Mohawk, last I knew, was at about 50% enrollment. Is that correct? So there's a lot of empty classrooms, and we pay for that. I don't know if you've noticed on the budget sheet, over half of our expenditures are school-related. It's a significant item. And ultimately, the quality of education has a lot to do with the balancing act of those finances, so it's very, very important. But over the last 2 or 3 years, our pre-K, which my grandchildren are in, the classes have gone from 1 to like 3 classes for those pre-K. And all those pre-K kids, they say once you're in the school system, you're going to want to stay in the school system, is quite remarkable. So they're flourishing, and there's a population growth at the pre-K level. And I think you've got to look at this issue not as a settle and done thing, but as a living organism that has to change with the times. And so if there's a lot of people in the elementary school and they're busting at the seams, yet the high school and middle school is 50% vacancy, you just got to approach it from a reasonable approach and say, this requires this sort of thing. And then if it goes the other way, it needs to go the other way, you know, eventually. But it's our school system, and we've got to be responsive to it.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on Article 10 at 1150, Article 10 of 33 at 1152? I guess there is. So, folks, if you could queue up over here and over there behind that microphone and be on deck. And remember the time. It is marching on, and we have a lot to do today.
Thanks, Alex Osterman, 925 Conway Road. And I just want to start out by saying that our daughters, Katie and Abby, are at Sanderson, and we are very lucky. It's an amazing school, and Emma and the teachers are doing a great job. I think it's the wrong time for the 6th grade move right now, given the other issues. We as parents are watching closely what's happening with the Mohawk heterogeneous grouping. I'm very concerned about what's happening. I think there's a lot of families that are concerned. So the idea that moving the 6th grade to Mohawk is going to somehow retain students, we're facing that we might then be looking to move our kids out of district sooner. I think that situation needs to get fixed first and get more of a some kind of unification amongst the families in support of what's happening in Mohawk before we talk about moving our 6th graders there.
Thank you for that. Ms. Sabrina, and then
Laura Scorbino, 25 Watson Spruce Corner Road. I agree with Mr. Kohler and Mr. Carter that this is an ecosystem, it's a dynamic ecosystem, and to the last speaker's point, things are interrelated. Okay, so just saying that what is going to happen potentially to people choosing Sanderson if Sanderson ends in 5th grade and they're not happy with Mohawk Middle and High School. When I was choosing schools for my son early on, Berkshire Trail in Cummington was held up as a lovely small town school that a lot of families in the play groups and the circles that I were in were looking at. This was before Emma, before the other principal. There was some concerns about Sanderson. People looked at Berkshire Trail. That school closed. Over time, the families who even wanted a choice in there were concerned that it ended in 5th grade and they were going to have to go to a middle school in Dalton. And they were concerned about their 6th graders were having a year. Right now, I know many families who choose Sanderson because it's our local town elementary school, and they still have significant concerns about Mohawk. I feel like there could be some unintended consequences of even those, free preschool is great, but for the folks who are then ready to commit to where they're going to send their children, having it end in 5th grade when they might want to go to the academy of Charlemont or other places that start in 7th grade, it might have a downward spiral. It's a dynamic system, and there could be unintended consequences, and I'm opposed to this.
thank you. Mary Snow, South Street, you can remain seated if you like.
My name is Mary Snow, and
I spent my entire educational experience as a teacher, teaching in the elementary grades from 1 through 8, which it was at that time, in the school where I was. And then I taught for a long time at Leslie College, which is now Leslie University. And I was teaching curriculum to teachers of children with special needs. So I had a wide range of students at different ages, and I had 4 of my own children from whom I learned a great deal about the development of children, and I'm grateful to all of them. And I'm just giving you this introduction because I have noticed that the conversation is getting broader and broader about how we look at the curriculum for children of different ages. And I just want to make a small contribution to that, in that I think we should think more broadly about the placement of children. And my own experience included 7th and 8th grade in Ashfield. My mother at that time, which was the beginning of the U.S. entry into World War II, so that will date me for you, made a call because she knew we were going to move due to the war to a different school. And she asked if I was in 8th grade, could take some courses in high school, which was all in the same building at that time. Now, we are going to have the same experience with kids moving into the high school in a different wing. And I am suggesting that we look flexibly at the needs of the children, and if there are some who need more advanced teaching, they simply be allowed to take a course in high school, and though they may be in 8th grade. It's not impossible. A school can be flexible in moving kids around the curriculum. And this gives us a whole new opportunity. And I notice that we seem to be really worried about our junior high school kids going to the high school. But I suggest to you that some kids are easily ready for taking some courses in the high school, and it would be a good way to move them in, to have them walk to a different part of the high school for courses. And I just wish that we could have that in our thinking as a possibility, that we could look at kids flexibly and see what they need and what they're ready for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Snow. Mr. Elwell, then Mr. Pless.
Will Elwell from Baptist Corner Road. My wife went to Mohawk, and our 4 children went to Mohawk. We felt that it really was a great experience for all of them. In this discussion, I'd like to kind of put somebody on the spot and ask them kind of an insider's view of what they think of this article. Namely, the principal of Mohawk, who happens to live in Ashfield, and I would love to hear from her, her view on this.
Lynn Dole, in response to that question, and Mr. Pless. I do want to point out that the superintendent has another meeting to be at 1 o'clock, so we'll lose him. So if we need his resources from him, we should exploit them while we have him. Ms. Dole.
Hello, Lynn Dole, Conway Road, and thank you for the invitation. In response to an earlier question, there was a committee composed of educators from the elementary schools and the middle school including administrators, worked together once the school committee and the BEST committee had asked the school administration to explore the possibility of the 6th grade coming. And so over a course of about a year, we had meetings where we looked philosophically at the question, we looked at various models, and Chrissy Schreiber was on that committee. Sarah Jetson, who's our curriculum director, who's also an Ashfield resident, was on the committee. I was on the committee. And so what we're bringing forward to you as the voters of Ashfield and then all the voters throughout the district is our recommendation, a proposal that we think would work well should the voters choose to have this pass for 6th graders to come to Mohawk, where they would be taught in a team approach where a group of educators who meet together every day can talk about what they see as the students' needs and the opportunities for those students. This week, I think, was a great example of the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade opportunities at Mohawk. We welcomed 6th graders from throughout the sending schools to a STEAM fair, and throughout the day on Thursday, they worked in teams of 3, a 6th grader, a 7th grader, and an 8th grader, to solve problems and explore challenges in a really dynamic learning environment that I think represents what we do at Mohawk, which is to engage students in teamwork and inquiry. And so I see this as an opportunity. Thank you.
I think that's the 12 o'clock bell. We have to move to our next class. Mr. Pless.
Phil Pless, Cape Street, Ashfield. So one of the discussions is that Mohawk is only at 50% capacity and Sanderson's getting filled. It says here on the blue sheet that BSE and Sanderson were not originally designed for pre-K. Introducing pre-K has increased enrollment, causing a shortage of space. As I recall, when Sanderson was built 20 years ago, it was designed for 330 students, and according to the goldenrod sheet, there are currently 161 students, so it seems that Sanderson is at half capacity also. So I don't see how a school with half 50% unused space has a shortage of space. So I don't buy that argument that we need to do this because we're running out of space at Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Pless. Mr. Clark.
Move the question.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay. So, this is he's moving the question that is non-debatable, non-amendable, and requires a 2/3 majority. So this might require a count for us. All right, tellers ready? We have 2 here, and Tyrion is over there. So, this would cut off debate, cut off discussion, and we go to the principal main motion and just vote on it. All those in favor of cutting off discussion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. So, I would say that we need to count, right? So if our tellers would come up. No, I'm sorry. Here's what's going on right now. You might recall at a special town meeting, the moderator was granted the discretion to determine whether or not there was a 2/3 majority. We have to wait till the Attorney General actually says, okay, it's a go, and our vote is sort of ratified by the Attorney General's office. So what I could do is ask you for this meeting or this vote to give me that discretion. But I think because there's a little bit of a controversial thing, maybe what we should do is just count. I think it's easier for us to just count. That's what we're going to do. So, if our tellers would get up, should I take over? All those in favor of cutting off debate, please raise one hand. Registered voters, raise one hand and keep it up until you've been counted. So you two are going to count this up.
7 minutes.
So you may put your hands down. All those opposed to cutting off debate? And it looks like you're on your own. And? Yeah. Okay, you may put your hands down.
This was the vote on the 6th graders and vote. Discussion.
Point of order?
We haven't actually.
Point of order.
Do we not count
abstentions?
abstentions?
I'm sorry.
Or do they count?
We should count abstentions. Thank you, good point of order. Abstentions. I will count these on my own. Okay, you're there. Abstentions, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Some comment question. Where did it
Thank you. You may put your hands down. So the total of 115 people voted, 5 abstentions, 20 nays, 82 yeses. Out of 115, 2/3 of 115 is 76, I believe, right? And 82 means that the motion to cut off debate carries, correct? 76. Yeah. So we got 82, we need 76. So, we go to the main motion. We're back to Article 10, and we're voting on Article 10 with no further discussion. All those in favor of Article 10 allowing 6th grade to go to Mohawk, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, I think we need to count. All right, so I'll have to count our tellers. Don't get too comfortable there. Everything going to work with? Yes. You want to swear in another?
I made some comments.
Do we have a volunteer teller who could come up and be sworn in to Huff, please? Thank you.
Yes.
This is her.
No.
Yes, tellers, some regular tellers are not available to various reasons. Okay, so all those in favor of, look quiet in the house just so we can call the question here. All those in favor who want to see Article 10 pass as an expression of Ashfield's view, please raise your hand and keep it up while we count. These are the ayes in favor. You may put your hands down. Thank you. All those opposed to Article 10 and wish to vote no, please raise your hand. Thank you. I'm sorry, you put your hands down. How long did I leave you up? So, abstentions, Mr. Markins reminder, thank you. Abstentions. All right, you may put your hands down. Thank you. So, it was 38 for passage, 64 opposed, and 7 abstentions, so that motion fails. Article 10 fails. So, sorry again. 7 abstentions. Sorry. Now let me say it one more time. 38 for, 64 opposed, 7 abstentions. Thank you. Article 11 and 1214. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to transfer $100,000 from free cash and borrow a sum not to exceed $100,000 for the purchase of a highway dump truck, provided, however, that no amount shall be borrowed or expended hereunder unless and until the town votes at an election to exempt from the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, Proposition 2 1/2, so called.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Mr. Carter.
As Mr. Murray had on his slides at the beginning of the program talking about the budget, we have the highway dump trucks. The highway dump trucks on a regular 20-year schedule. When we get to the 20th year, they've probably given us about all that they can give us without putting really significant repair dollars into them. So this 1999 Freightliner dump truck is due for replacement in the next fiscal year. There was an article this week in the paper that said that we were going to borrow $200,000. That's never been our plan. We're figuring that the new truck with the plow and the all-season body and all of those good things is going to be $200,000. Our plan, as I said in the motion, is a down payment of $100,000 from free cash, and then borrowing the remainder, which could be paid in 1 or 2 years, probably at the most, depending on how the next budget looks and how we want to try to stabilize the tax rate.
Thank you. This has the recommendation of the Finance Committee, unanimous recommendation 4-0. Discussion. And one other thing from Mr. Carter.
Just so you know, it says in the motion, it is tied to the ballot question that's downstairs. So it needs to pass here and also pass by a majority, right, on the ballot downstairs, and 2/3 here. So yeah, to make this work, this is the same type of debt business that we've used for a number of years, just on some of these big things like graders and payloaders and backhoes and that sort of thing, just to try to spread that expense out over a couple of years.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Merrill, would you come up to use the mic, please? And if anybody else is going to want to speak, wants to be on deck, please come up to one of the microphones.
Quick question, is this Tamsin Merrill, Creamery Road, is this dump truck also used for plowing?
Sure. It's got, this is fully equipped with a new snow plow, and a matter of fact, we're going to be updating to a little bit more modern equipment where it's actually going to have a side plow on it, so on some of our wider roads, instead of the trucks having to make 4 trips back and forth to clean, that hopefully we'll cut down by half to speed that up. So yeah, it'll be set up with a sander body, just the same as what we bought a lot of our new ones, with the addition of this side plow, wing plow.
And I heard you say we used to spread the debt over a number of years, right? Sorry, it's getting close to lunch. Further discussion, I don't see anyone at the mic stands. Yes, Ms. Jacobson. If you wish to speak, just to hasten, to speed up the... Okay, do not run. Don't run.
Julia Jacobson, John Road. I'm just curious how our highway expenses compare with surrounding towns. Is there an off the top of the head kind of idea of that?
That's pretty germane.
Mr. Carter.
Well, it seems that's a question that probably would take all kinds of data to try to get your hands around, because you take a town like us with over 70 miles of road and compare it to a neighboring town that may have less than 40 miles of road to try to figure that out. And also the difference between the number of miles of gravel road and paved road and that sort of thing. I know our expenses year to year, this year was a big year for winter roads, and the weather that we had in January, moving there into February, our mud season was much longer than what we would normally anticipate. But we've been doing our best to try to support the roads and control the expenses where we can. But it's a lot of times I say it's like buying tires. I don't find a lot of economy in buying cheap tires for my car. I think that maintaining, and I think it's proven true, is that by maintaining the roads the best we can during the summer, it helps us even out that expense, just like we try to do with everything else. But I don't think we've looked really at what it costs us compared to other towns, because quite honestly, everybody's going to account for it differently.
Okay, where'd you go? Ms. Jacobson, that answers your question. Why don't I see you? Okay. Mr. Murray.
I think the question is a very good question, and I can't say that we have data to investigate that, but I've just made a note because I think it would be a good thing for us to try to do. It may well turn out that we can't find easily comparable or verifiably comparable data, but I think we should try to do that. And this is going to sound a little self-serving, but a few years ago, I think we, in some way of trying to justify some kind of a highway-based expense, I did some comparison of what some neighboring towns, maybe 3 or 4 neighboring towns, spent on their roads compared to what we spent, and I thought it came out favorably for us. Now, I can't point to anything that might be in detail for you, but I think that's something that we as a finance committee might well undertake this coming year as a project and see what we can find. Thank you very much for that suggestion.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. The highway superintendent, Mr. Quasano, thank you.
So I can tell you about comparison to some other towns regarding trucks and equipment. There's not very many towns that replace their trucks on a 20-year schedule. Most towns are sooner than that. Some are half of that. A few of the towns that do try to go 20 years, they go 20 years with their cab and chassis, but they replace the bodies about halfway through. And we're able to get through 20 years with the entire truck, the body, the plow, and everything normally. And I think that's, we try hard to maintain them properly, and wash the salt off them, and that type of thing. So if that helps.
Thank you.
Karen Corner on Bird Hill Road. I'm sure we need a new dump truck, and I wouldn't want to prevent Tom from having one to meet. My only worry is that it would be wider, because on the dirt roads, the damages the trees on the
Stay in front of the microphone.
Sorry. So as long as it's not wider, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Other discussion on Article 11 about the debt exclusion for the dump truck. Anyone? You ready to vote? Yeah. Okay, this will require our tellers once again, I'm sorry. This will be 2/3 vote is required for this. Again, it's recommended by the Finance Committee, so our tellers can come. How about a voice first? If it's unanimous, but okay, well, we know there were 115 voters a minute ago, so if this is unanimous, then we don't need to count. All those in favor of Article 11, calling for debt exclusion for a new dump truck, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? You're a wise woman, Mrs. Muller. Point of order. I'm sorry, Ms. Lynn.
Mary Lynn Buckland Road, just to remind us that we have to vote downstairs to back this up.
Yes. I think Mr. Carter pointed that out. And that'll be by majority. This requires 2/3 up here, right? Okay.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move to advance Article 29 as it relates to general government expenses.
Is there a second to a motion to advance? Okay. Would you like to explain why so that people know what they're voting?
Well, before we get to Article 12, which has general government expenses, Article 29 actually accepts some chapter and verses that have to do with how certain officers are compensated.
Thank you. This is the motion to advance it and deal with Article 29 before we deal with Article 12. Any discussion? This requires a simple majority. I'm sorry. Oh, the page, that's right, on your warrant. Everybody see it? Article 29, the articles run sequentially. Just to advance it. They want us to take a look at it before they vote on whether to advance it. That's what I hear. Everybody needs the information Mr. Carter is dying to say. Yes. Everybody, are you ready to vote on whether to advance Article 29? No? Sure. Okay. All those in favor of advancing Article 29, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's advanced unanimously. So, let's deal, do I hear a motion with respect to Article 29?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kohler.
I move the town vote to accept the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 108E, for the purposes of allowing a treasurer or tax collector who completes the necessary training and receives certification as a Massachusetts municipal treasurer or collector through the Massachusetts Collectors and Treasurers Association be entitled to receive additional compensation in the amount of 10% of their annual annual salary up to a maximum of $1,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
And would you like to speak to this before we get to finance?
The acceptance of this statute would allow the town to pay additional compensation of up to $1,000 to the treasurer and/or collector upon certification of the employee in that field. What the attempt is here is to keep us competitive if we vote in favor of this, and to incentivize the treasurer/collector to become certified. The certification process is a 3-year process. So for them to receive the extra $1,000, they would have to become certified, and they would have to maintain the certification. So they have to take annual CEUs and so on and so forth. So if we vote this down, then potential treasurers/collectors would know that, and we would be less competitive to keep the best people. So we feel it's a good idea.
Thank you. This has been recommended by our Finance Committee, 4 to 0 to 0 unanimously. Discussion on Article 29.
Moderator?
Mr. Carter.
The reason for advancing 29 ahead of the general government budget is the $1,000 for our certified treasurer that we have now is already in that budget line. So instead of voting it and then trying to explain it to you later, I felt that this was a more streamlined way.
I agree, it is. Any discussion on Article 29? All in favor of Article 9, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Article 29 passes unanimously. Article 12.
Moderator.
Mr. Lannick.
I have to confess that I'm really not invested in the Kentucky Derby, but it's not too late to plant peas. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $438,399 to pay for general government expenses.
Second.
Made and second. Any comments that you'd like to make about this? Mr. Lannick.
This is our general government expense, covers moderators and stipends, town administrator salaries, etc., assessors stipends and salaries, treasurer. There are some increases as recommended from the salary study that we did in this line item. There are increases in utilities and insurance that are happening. There's an increase in our audit line that is a $5,000 mandatory audit in addition to our normal auditing mandated for OPEB. We have no option but to pay that. We also added part-time administrative support for the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board so that to help them meet their duties as well.
Thank you. This is recommended by our Finance Committee 400 unanimously and requires a simple majority vote. Discussion. Hearing none, we're ready to vote? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Christine. Oh, you're knitting. Thank you. It was very graceful, boy. All right, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of general government expenses, the motion in Article 12, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Article 13, Act 1231. Yes, Mr. Kohler.
I move the town vote and raise and appropriate $3,000 to pay for the reserve account to provide for extraordinary and unforeseen expenditures under MGL 40, Section 6 for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2018.
Under Massachusetts General Laws. Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded it? Bill? Oh, thank you. Please give us an explanation.
Just general bookkeeping going on here. This account is used for unforeseen expenses with the approval of the Finance Committee. We do it every year.
Thank you. And yes, this has been recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously 4-0-0. Discussion. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of Article 13, establishing a reserve fund, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously again. Article 14.
Mr. Moderator?
Chair Leonard.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $223,514 and to transfer $5,700 from the dog license and control fund for a total of $229,214 to pay for public safety expenses.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Kohler? Talk to us.
So this is all of our EMS, our emergency services rather, police, fire, animal control, and tree warden. We did go up on our tree warden expense a little bit this year. We're never going to catch up on tree work. There's enough tree work to do forever. But we tried to put a little bit more money towards that this year for an overall total of just under $230,000.
Thank you. This is recommended by our Finance Committee unanimously 4-0-0. Discussion. None. You ready to vote? All those in favor of Article 14, Public Safety and Expenses, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Article 15. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $710,313 to pay for public works expenses.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kohler. Talk to us.
Talk to you. It's a $104,000 increase over the prior year. Some of the increase comes from the salary adjustments that we talked about at the beginning of the program that Mr. Murray went through. Not all of them, certainly, but some of them. There's $50,000 that we're setting aside for transfer station improvement. We're under a consent order with DEP to make some improvements in how we operate and how we have the transfer station set up. So we're going through the engineering on that now. The engineers actually came back to us with a preliminary plan. We sent them back to make some more improvements, that thinking that we're going to do this once, we're probably going to do it once in the next 30 or 40 years, so to make it the most efficient that we can. If you recall, last year we voted a debt exclusion when it came time to do the work at the transfer station of $100,000. So with the reduction in the vocational expense, we had some money that we could set aside in the budget to try to get ahead of those expenses. So that's a majority of what's there. We've actually added money to a winter roads account. That's a very scientific formula we use. We take the last 3-year average, and then we round it to $1 that fits into the budget. But it is about a $15,000 increase from the prior year. And in general highway, we've also added another $10,000 or $15,000 to help us pay for some extra gravel and the supplies and all the things that go into general highway expenses.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Requiring a simple majority, this has been recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously 4-0-0. Discussion. Yes, Ms. Al.
Judy Halpott, Spruce Corner Road.
Just for the folks downstairs.
Question on the fuel. Is Tom still here? Biofuel?
Is that a question? What's the question?
Are we using biofuel?
Thank you.
No. Okay. Thank you.
The answer was no, by the superintendent. Mr. Elwell.
Will Elwell, Baptist Corner Road. I'm just curious what the income is at the transfer station generated by the permits and dump the bags into the dumpster. Anybody have that?
Mr. Forsan, do you have that answer? Do you know the income at the transfer station? While he's coming, I will tell you my aspiration was that we get through the first 20 articles by 1 o'clock and then we take a break for lunch and come back at 1:45. That was my hope. It doesn't mean we have to meet that, but that was my hope. Mr. Forsan, revenue at the transfer station.
I actually don't think I have that number with me this year. I think I always have that number with me, but this year I don't. Let me look at the next page. I'm sorry I don't have that number, but what I can tell you is at our budget hearings over the years, we've talked about it, and I usually have a list with me of the last several years of that. And it's normally pretty close to our expenses. It's approximately. It runs usually around maybe $10,000 less income than what we expend at the transfer station in that area. And of course, we account for some of that being that the town ourselves use the transfer station, the town hall, the various departments, the fire department, highway department, we bring in our stuff there. And of course, we're not paying for it as we bring our rubbish bags there, so that accounts for some of that. But it's generally pretty close to the expense.
Mr. Elwell, you good? Does anybody have an exact number? Unfortunately, no, not with us today.
I'll have that number next year.
Right. Okay, so, further discussion about Article 15, Public Works Expense. Ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor, requiring a simple majority of Article 15, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Article 16, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Kohler.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $58,787 to pay for health and human service expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Talk to us.
Okay, basically this is for the Board of Health stipends, the Board of Health expense, and health agents. And senior center expenses, local council on aging expenses, and veteran benefits. And basically, this is an increase of $5,394, of which the senior center expenses increased with higher usage of services. So, and local veteran benefits also increased this year.
Thank you. This has been recommended by the Finance Committee Unanimously, 4-0, and this requires a simple majority to pass. Discussion. Are you ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of Article 16, Health and Human Service Expenses, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 17.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Chairman.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $82,218 to pay for cultural and recreational expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Goldberg. Thank you. Please.
Okay, so these are our library expenses, open space and recreational planning expenses. We set aside money every year for our required dam inspection that we do at the lake. It's on a routine schedule, and we set aside money every year for that. Invasive species removal, we've been setting aside $9,000 consistently for the last few years for that. It's an ongoing issue. The dam maintenance and historical commission expenses as well. Small salary adjustment based on the salary study for the library as well.
Thank you. This has been recommended by our folks on our Finance Committee 4-0 unanimously and requires a simple majority to pass. Discussion. Yes. Ms. Lilly.
Sandy Lilly, 1567 K Street. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate spot, but in this article is money for the building park expense, which includes lawn mowing and anything else. Since the town bought the town common now from the O'Donnells, we've always relied on volunteers to mow the lawn. And last year, the man that had been doing it said he couldn't do it anymore. So I put together, there was 4 or 5 of our professional guys that do lawns to take care of the lawn. And I did a spring cleanup, which was very tedious with David Knoll's help. And I really think it would be appropriate. I would hope that next year we could have possibly $2,000 for the town common expense to hire a contractor to come in and mow the lawn on a weekly basis. Is this the appropriate place to have this? No? Yes.
When you say this year, you're talking about this next fiscal budget? Okay, so not asking for this budget to be amended. Okay. All right. Any comment or question? Thank you. Comment or question, Ms. Link? Is this a follow-up to? No. Is there a follow-up? Is there any further discussion on the request to add money next fiscal year, not this fiscal year, a couple $1,000 for both?
Sounds like a good idea. I'm David Culp, Village Treasurer. Sounds like a good idea, and I'd like to suggest we make an amendment to add some additional money.
Can't add it.
We can't. That's right. We can only go less.
Yeah, I suppose I can rule that it's within the scope to go a couple $1,000 more, but I prefer the rule of thumb is it's not a good idea because you're asking for more than people had posted notice. So I don't think it's a good precedent to set. So unless the meeting really disagree with me, I prefer that it be for the next fiscal year. Mr. Murray. And I didn't forget, who's next?
Mr. Moderator, is it not possible if we chose to add $2,000 for that provided the $2,000 amount be eliminated somewhere else within the article? I think that would be awkward, quite frankly, but isn't that technically feasible?
I think on an $82,000 item, I think that I can allow Mr. Culp's proposed amendment. It is so far out of the scope of the Article 84 versus 82 that I think the meeting should be able to vote on whether or not to do it. So I think our rule is within the scope, yes. It's only 2.4% of the posted 82,000 plus. I think it's a good point, and I think I'll allow Mr. Colt to make the motion to amend, which will, of course, need in writing, but for now, Town Clerk, Mr. Colt moves.
I'd like to make a motion to add $2,000 to this particular recreational Article 17 for maintenance of the town common.
Yes, that's been seconded by Mrs. Lilly. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Discussion, we have a motion to amend by $2,000, that line. Discussion on the motion to amend. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's a great idea, we should do it.
You can't wait to plant those peas. Any further discussion? All those in favor of increasing this article by $2,000 in order to provide for mowing services, professional mowing services, say aye. Aye. Any opposed to the amendment? Any abstentions? The amendment carries, so we're talking about an article that has $2,000 more. So, back to the main motion, and I think with Ms. Lynn.
Mary Lynn, Buckland Road. This is what I got, I'll say next. But first, I just want to say, I think we should also say thank you to whoever's been mowing that our common for us for free for the last several years. My question is about the invasive species removal, and you've noted that this 9,000 that's in the line is the same amount we've been putting in every year. And so if that's the case, there was a big hearing where we had several options given to us about future, different options for invasive species removal. And I wonder how, if there was a decision about what direction to go with that, and if this 9,000 will cover, whatever options that we have.
Yes, it will cover it. What we've been doing is an annual assessment. So we have a survey, licensed survey crew that goes out there and does this kind of work to find where they are, assess the current status. Some of the options that were proposed at that public hearing, our consultant brought forward were lake drawdown, which we've done for the last 2 years now. Another option was chemical treatment, which we were not interested in at this time. We would rather have other things before we had to go to that extreme. And we've done some vacuuming, hand pulling and vacuuming with special equipment in the last couple of years, and the subsequent analysis has let us understand that that's not keeping up with it, because somehow or another the weeds continue to grow. Much like in our gardens where we plant peas. So this $9,000 will continue. It's an adequate budget to continue working on that problem. We need to continue doing the analysis every year to see where we're at with the invasives, and that will help guide us going forward as to what action we continue to take.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, and the answer here.
East Bear River Road. I'm looking at the amounts for the Ashfield Dam, the inspection, and for maintenance. A number of us joined some folks from Conway at a meeting maybe a month ago about implications of climate change and what the risks were and how our towns were preparing for it. And one of the things that came up over and over again as a huge risk to both the center of Ashfield and the center of Conway is the stability of the Ashfield Dam. And it's my feeling that we need to be putting a lot of thought into how unstable is it, and what can we do to make sure that it really is stabilized, given the increased severity and frequency of severe storms.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
I'm fairly familiar with that subject. Where the dam sits at this point in time is the town has spent nearly 100,000 round numbers, I think 88 or something like that, on making it shovel ready so that we could get a grant from the state, as did Conway. And so those design plans are complete. We've attempted to go after the grant 3 years in a row, and we have failed. It was with the change in governorship that things started changing because they wanted to see economic value. In other words, for every dollar they invested, that they could see economic return equivalent to that. And we can only say there's health and safety, and yes, there is a little bit of economic value. We have industry and businesses that thrive on the lake. So we keep going. Every year we do it, and we're hopeful that we will get it. I was at the same meeting in Conway, and the status of the lake, we are required to do dam inspections every other year. It's $4,000 total by an engineering firm. So we set aside $2,000 each year to accommodate that. But our rating has shifted from satisfactory several years ago to fair. And I think until we go to unsatisfactory, we're probably not going to get the attention of the state. But this year, we're very hopeful. Steve Kulik has said he put his shoulder to this in his lame duck session. So we're looking forward to working with him, and we remain very hopeful.
Thank you. Ms. Schwartz.
Celia Schwartz, Sears Road. I just have a question about the mowing, and I'm grateful for the people who have been volunteering to do it, but is this something that the highway department has the equipment for and could pick up?
Mr. Poisson, the question is whether or not the highway department can take over mowing of the town.
We don't have equipment for it right now. We have one small lawnmower, so we have the adequate equipment to take it on right now.
Thank you. Question and answer. Any further discussion on Article 17?
Mr. Moderator.
Oh, Mr. Carter.
Yeah, probably an answer from this side on that, besides not having the equipment. If we take the highway department and start doing all these other little projects around town, it consumes a lot of time, and they don't have time to work on the highways. So you know, we already spent quite a bit of their time on managing the transfer station and doing those sorts of things and some other ancillary projects. But there has to be a limit if we're going to keep the money on the roads.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote on Article 17, cultural and recreational expenses in the amount of $84,000, 218? Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Article 18.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Carter.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $81,107 to pay our debt service expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please explain.
As listed in the warrant, our only debt that we're servicing this year is the highway garage. So those are pretty evenly spread out until 2045. And the short-term debt interest is something that we have used very, very little of in the last several years. That's for short-term borrowing in the course of a 12-month period, but in the quarterly tax bills and collection, it's not very often at all that we need to do that. So, but this is just money set aside as a placeholder.
Thank you. This has been recommended by our Finance Committee, also unanimously, 4-0-0. Requires a simple majority. Discussion. service expenses totaling $81,107. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? I think that was unanimous, right? Very talking to. Article 19.
Mr. Moderator,
Mr. Cohen.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $55,234 to pay for intergovernmental expenses for the Franklin Regional Council of Government Expenses, known as FERCA.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the chair. Talk to us.
Okay, this is an increase of $824 over last year. Pays for a bunch of stuff, our core assessment, accounting services, software maintenance, procurement services, radio maintenance, inspection program, and that's it. RAPC is that the radio too? Yeah. So it's a slight increase over last year.
Thank you. Slight increase. I have it $824, a really slight increase. All right, very good. This has been recommended by our Finance Committee. Requires a simple, but unanimously, requires a simple majority vote. Discussion. Are we ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of intergovernmental assessments in the amount of $55,234, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. The motion carries. Article 20.
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Atlantic.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $182,164 to pay for employee benefit expenses.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carter. What's up here?
So this is pretty straightforward. This article relates directly to all of our town employees' benefits. The Franklin Regional Retirement System, workers' comp, our unemployment insurance, our health insurance, our retiree health insurance, Medicare.
Thank you. This is recommended unanimously 4-0-0 by our Finance Committee and requires a simple majority. Discussion. Ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of benefits in the amount of $182,164, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? This too passes unanimously. It is 12:53, and we're on Mr. Field. I guess we're moving on to Article 21. I think this will be the last one that we entertain, and then we'll take a lunch break.
I'd like to move Article 22.
Whoa, I'm sorry, Mr. Field. We're at Article 21, and we're ready to take a lunch break.
Yes, I know. What I'd like to bring 22 up is due to our director, to our senior center is here. And she does not live in this town, she lives out of town. And I'd like very much for us to be able to vote on Article 22, capital expenses, or she won't have to stay here until then.
So, does somebody wish to make a motion to advance?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion about advancing Article 22 before Article 21? No. All those in favor of advancing Article 22, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we have advanced it. Now, who's making a motion on Article 22?
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to raise and appropriate $142,000, transfer from free cash $150,000, and transfer $5,000 from the Fred Cross Fund for a total of $297,000 to pay for capital expenses.
Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. O'Leary. Please.
So, I think most of the audience here saw the PowerPoint presentation that Ted put on earlier. There was a slide dedicated to this, and I won't take a lot of time to expand on it unless there's the interest. Basically, I'd be repeating all the things that he had said during that slide.
So we'll wait for questions.
Yeah.
Very good, thank you. This has been recommended by the Finance Committee unanimously 4-0 to 0. Requires a simple majority for passage discussion. Yes, Mr. Cole.
Because we're putting some money towards broadband, I thought this would be a good opportunity because some people were interested in what the progress was on our broadband project, and I just wanted to quickly give folks an update on what's going on. We have submitted all of our utility poles to the Verizon and Eversource for getting estimates for the improvement costs, and I now expect that within the month. That's going to be a major expense. It's called Make Ready. And it's expected to be over $1 million to upgrade all of those poles. The total project cost is about $3.7 million, and we authorized $2.3 million several years ago to pay for this. But the good news is that the state has come up with more money, so if we are over budget, because we only have budgeted $800,000 for the Make Ready, the state will cover the rest. So that's good news. The second is that we're in the just dotting the I's and crossing the T's for the final design, which has to do with where all the wires go down the roads and where things get spliced and all that sort of thing. I should have that next week. And with that, we should have a final estimate for our costs. Plus, hopefully next week, I will also be getting details about the costs for dropping connections to every individual premise throughout the town, and that hopefully sometime this summer we'll be able to communicate to you all what those costs will be to you. The good news is that we're moving forward on that. Hopefully we'll be going out to procurement for construction sometime this summer or early fall. Even though the Make Ready won't be done, we would be able to line up a construction firm to do the construction as the poles get fixed. And right now it looks like we are within budget. So that's the quick status of that.
Thank you. Let me just ask, Mr. Cole, are there any questions? Obviously, thanks to you and all your colleagues who have been working so hard on this. Questions about broadband before we move on?
Yeah, will it serve every house in town?
No. Our goal is to serve almost every house in town. Certainly, some residents won't take service, and there are a few exceptional situations for homes that are off the grid and well off the main road. There's, for example, one dilapidated sort of hunting cabin that's only accessible through Buckland, for example, that won't be served, and so on. But otherwise, our intention is to make this available to everybody. But the installation cost may vary depending on the situation. If you have a very long driveway, then the costs will be greater. If your utilities are buried versus overhead, then those costs will be greater. And our intention is to provide you with an estimate about what those costs will be for individual homeowners later this year, because once we have a full sense of the budget, then we know how much we can subsidize everybody's installation, and then after that's left, whatever's left over is what the individual homeowners would have to pay.
Thank you. Okay, so back to the main motion. Thank you for that, Mr. Pope. Good opportunity. Any further discussion on capital projects? On Article 22. Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor of capital projects, Article 22, $297,000, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Did I hear an opposition? No, that's unanimously. Okay. I've just been advised it might be better to go back to Article 21, complete that, and then we go to lunch. Sound like a plan? So, Article 21. Mr. Moderator? Mr. Carter.
Mr.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate $71,804 to pay for our ambulance service expenses.
Is there a second?
Second.
How does this compare to what we paid in the past?
It's actually a decrease of $11,648. It very closely relates to a cartoon I have on my desk that says if you don't account for things the same way, you can make yourself look good. But what it is they spread out the deck a little bit further on the new ambulance station up in Goshen, so that reduced our costs to a certain extent. And accounted for what they were expecting for fees and so forth to come in, and it ends up being a decrease for expanded service.
Also recommended by our Finance Committee 4-0 unanimously, and also requires a majority vote, simple majority. Discussion on the ambulance service. No? Ready to vote? All those in favor of Article 21, $71,804 for our ambulance service, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. We just saved $11,000. We could spend more on lunch. We're going to suspend this meeting, please. I'd say be back here at 2 o'clock, reasonable? Please be back at 2 o'clock. I'm sorry, before we break, folks, listen, what the problem, we want to resolve a problem. I'm sorry. It's an important problem for the report that the town clerk has to issue to the state. Excuse me. Discussion? Over here? Thank you. So when you come back in, I think the best way, we have to find out how many people are in the hall. And to save time, I've asked that people not have to stand in line and check in. So when you come back in, what you're going to do is sit down, and once we call the meeting to order again, resume our meeting, I'm going to ask people to count off 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll get a sense of how many people are there. So when you come back in, please try to be a little orderly so we can get started at 2 o'clock with the button, count off, get a number, and get right back to the side. Thank you. Have a great break.